Welcome back to the Foreclosure Podcast. My name is Brian Treat. Each week on this podcast, we talk about the economy, real estate, foreclosures, and how to avoid it. If you're in financial peril and behind on your payments, we've talked about tips and tactics on how to set yourself up for success. And in the past, I've had a number of guests on offering more strategic advice in terms of legal help. This week, we're shifting gears a little bit, and I wanted to have this guest on for a while. And her name is Katie Totman. Hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm great, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on the pod here with me. So you and I know each other sort of from the podcast world in general here in Texas. But I know one of the things that you're working on now is sort of building out a basically a consulting business that does what?
Sure. Yeah. So I am a financial coach and I help busy millennials like myself get on a budget so they can pay down debt and begin to increase their savings.
Uh,
So
and
I,
so so I want to make sure we get contact info in there. Obviously, in the show notes there'll be a link. But where can folks find you?
yeah. So my business is Clear Sense Coaching, and that's cents like dollars and cents. And I have an Instagram and a Facebook page, and within the Instagram, and they're both at Clear Sense Coaching. That's the
Okay.
best way to find me. And you can also find my scheduling page. I offer free, like 20 to 30-minute calls just to kind of see, what you're dealing with, to see how if I can help you. And then there's some other scheduling options for the services I currently offer as
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, so since COVID, we're in a rough boat right now. The economy is not great. Foreclosures are increasing. It does really feel like there's still people are still digging out from the job loss and all the insanity that was 2020, 2021. And we were going to kind of talk about just some general strategic things that people can do to set themselves up for success financially going forward, whether or not they're facing foreclosure or not. These are just some general ideas about things people can do that would make their lives maybe a little bit easier financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I can give you a little background of how I got into financial coaching.
I'm sure.
So, in the wake of COVID, so like October, I think it was, of 2020, I kind of had I don't want to call it rock bottom moment, but sort of from a financial standpoint. I found myself in about $30,000 of consumer debt. And I had just completed a virtual like meditation or yoga session with a friend of mine. And I went to go pay her through Venmo. And almost like moments after I sent it, I got a notice from my bank saying I overdrafted. And I was like, wait a minute, I know there's money in there, but clearly I didn't know where my money was going. So that was also a part of it.
Mhm.
And that was my moment. I was like, I need to figure this out. And so I did it on my own. I mean, I found a budgeting app that I liked called You Need a Budget, and it's a zero-based budgeting system. So for me, I felt that tracking everything, at least for me, really helped me understand where my money was going. So tracking everything
Right.
really down to the penny. And I know sometimes folks may not like that, and that's okay. But for me, like if you're in that situation where you're kind of frazzled and you're like, I am maybe making the most money I've ever made, and I should be I should be fine. I should be able to pay off my credit card debt, my car payment, my house, my mortgage, like working towards that. All right. Um, it may be something to start with, to just start tracking where your money's going to
Right.
give you a better idea. And so, sorry, back to my quick little story. So that's where I started, and I guess over the last 5 years, I'm almost debt free. Like all of the consumer, like high interest credit card debt is completely paid off.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, so I was able to do it, and it really spurred something in me. It's like, okay, if I can do it, I want to share this knowledge. I want other people to know like it is possible. You just have to be intentional with it and kind of get a bigger look at what you're doing.
Yeah, and just fostering better habits. I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I know. I'm sure you know. Everyone out there knows someone who I'm. I won't name names, obviously, but I have a couple of friends who do very well for themselves, for themselves professionally, but who are always carrying around a wad of cash, which always seems incredibly weird to me. Like, why are you carrying $1,000 in cash? That seems unwise.
Yeah. So I think probably the first thing I would recommend is if you're not if you're concerned with, hey, I don't know where my money's going, I feel like I'm drowning, I would say honestly get on a budget of some kind that's going to work for you. Um, and truly, I mean that can quite literally be an Excel spreadsheet, a notebook, just any one of the budgeting apps. I mean, I mentioned you need a budget. There's I think Monarch Money is another one. There's a My Budget Coach, which full disclosure, I'm a coach on there as well, but it's a very kind of do-it-yourself sort of budgeting system there. But really sit down and maybe even for a month and just track where everything's going. And I almost guarantee it's probably going to open your eyes a little bit.
Mm,
Because even with my own budget, there are months where I mean I'm not perfect, and I have to shift a little bit. Like we may go over in the grocery budget, which means, okay, maybe I'm not spending from another category or something like that.
right.
And uh, aside from that, emergency funds are just huge in my opinion, because I mean, something is going to happen. Unfortunately, it's almost that inevitable. It's going when it happens, it's not if, it's when. And so even if you have like a month's worth of expenses saved up,
Hmm.
I feel like that's at least a good start to where you're not then relying on your credit card again to put that huge expense on there. And then you kind of feel like you're like, well, I'm in where I started again. Like how
Right.
can I get ahead? Um, and I know in, this day and age, I feel like it may seem almost impossible to kind of stop those habits. Like if you are on credit card debt specifically, I mean, the key would be really don't spend on those credit cards. Like either do the cash envelope system or debit card and be able to set aside, even just a little bit every month or every paycheck. Start small if you have to. Because I know I actually did the Dave Ramsey's baby steps
Hmm.
for a little while, like when I very first started my journey. And I mean, I think for me personally, they help. They may not resonate with everybody. I don't agree 100% with him on everything, but I do think the emergency fund is huge. I think he still says like $1,000, which is good, but I think realistically, maybe bump that up to 2,500. I don't know how much $1,000 really can get you anymore,
Yeah, not
but
far.
yeah. So,
So,
I
so,
mean,
so
and yeah.
do you advocate holding it aside actually in cash, or like opening up a separate savings account where you can just sort of park some money where you can see it, but it's not necessarily front of mind?
Sure. I mean, this is again my experience. I would recommend putting it in a high yield savings account.
Okay.
And mentally, if that's going to help you, it's still liquid technically. It shouldn't be hard to move it out of there within like maybe a day or two. I mean, quite frankly, if you have to swipe your credit card, great, but you have that money there to then automatically pay that off. So high yield savings accounts are good in my opinion because it can sit there, but it can grow interest, which I think right now it's at 3.5 or 3.75%.
Hmm.
Um, and at least it's working for you
Right.
instead of having just the liquid, the cash in a box or something.
Right.
Which again, if you're more comfortable with that, I'm not going to argue. But yeah,
Okay. And then in terms of, I mean, I have a very basic, I use QuickBooks only because I've used QuickBooks for a jillion years. Uh, you know, the breakdown of my sort of expense categories is not very complex for mine. Mine's very, very straightforward. And, I mean, for anyone out there, it doesn't really have to be, you don't need 27 categories of expenses. You need, one income and, maybe 10 at most sort of expense categories of where money goes. Is that more or less
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, I would say, I mean, everyone's going to be different. So, like for me, I break it. I get pretty into the weeds sometimes. So, I
Uh,
mean, I have categories for like everything for, groceries, dining out, coffee. That's like a big one for me. So it's like,
uh,
okay, specifically if I go out for coffee,
uh,
gas, household, pets. If you have pets, I usually recommend put a category for them. So like food and like basic stuff. The other thing that I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. The other thing I really love are what are called sinking funds. And essentially
s-
what
s-
that sinking,
sinking. Okay.
sinking, yeah, sinking. And essentially what that is things that don't happen on a monthly basis, but you know that they are going to happen. Probably the most popular example is Christmas. So if you know that, hey, I'm going to be buying gifts for people, instead of scrambling at the end of the year, like, oh, I'm going to spend, I don't know, $1,000 on Christmas, and you don't have it, you basically plan out, okay, how much am I going to spend, ballpark it, and then just divide by 12 and set money aside every month. So when
Right.
Christmas gets here, you know that you have it.
Right.
So, Christmas, property taxes, car insurance, Amazon Prime, those things that are going to be happening, and just get ahead of it a little bit if you
Right. Right.
can.
Okay.
So yeah, budgeting categories are super personal. So like with the emergency fund, kind of going back to that, I mean that's going to be your basic necessities that you need to survive. So you're probably, if God forbid something happens, um, you know, lose a job or something to where you have to rely on that. Ideally, it's going to cover your, rent, mortgage payment, food, gas, household, like
Right.
toiletries, things like that. Probably your pets. You don't want your pets to starve, obviously. But things you need to survive. So, like, you may find yourself cutting out the luxuries, like maybe certain subscriptions or things that you can go without until you kind of get back on your feet.
Right. Sure. And do you have, I personally, I've always sort of hated dealing with any of the big banks just because I don't trust them. Do you have banks, online banks, financial institutions that you sort of prefer or would steer people towards?
I mean, I personally use USAA, and I think, don't quote me on this, I'm not 100% sure. I think anybody can be a member, but like you have to be military or military adjacent to take advantage of their like their insurance and certain
Hmm.
other tool or products that they offer. Otherwise, I've credit unions if you can. I also, I mean, I have most of my money in Marcus, which is a Goldman Sachs high yield savings, because they
Hmm.
don't have a cap on how many withdrawals you can make, and so
Okay.
I keep my money in there. So it's high yield savings, so it works for me in terms of the interest. But yeah, I mean, I would just recommend people kind of do their research on what they're comfortable with and what is easily accessible. In terms of being able to move money around or get access to it and things like that, so it's not like locked up in, then you can't get
Right.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been using an online bank now for 5 or 6 years, and then realized I got dinged recently because I moved. I have limited transactions on my savings account, and so I got dinged for some incredibly small fee. But those things just irritate the heck out of me. So I just can't stand being charged, $3
Oh
and
yeah.
12 cents. Like, right, it
Yeah.
feels like a failing on my part
No.
to pay crap like that.
Yeah, but definitely I would recommend, again, like do the research, like see if they're different checking accounts, if there are fees associated with whatever it may be, if you have to have a minimum balance to avoid fees, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so I mean, broadly speaking, we've talked a lot on this podcast about foreclosures and folks that are sort of that are facing it. I have long been under the impression, credit agencies, credit scores, that crap also just I don't know. I've been always been deeply suspicious of. of that process and resent the fact that people can see how I spend my money. And but it feels like it's a game we all need to play in
Hmm.
order to save money and not pay fees unduly. Do you have any thoughts, recommendations about? I mean, there are credit monitoring services out there. There are places you can go to where you can pay a $5 fee a month where you're basically rehabbing, you're basically paying a loan, but that credit reporting service shows that as an on time payment, and that improves your credit.
Hmm.
Any thoughts or advice in terms of credit?
I would say, I mean, definitely it's something you want to monitor. Like I use, hang on, I've got it on my. I feel like I should know it by heart. Like I have Credit Karma that's on my
Mm,
phone, and as far as I know, it's free. I've never been charged for it, but it'll monitor, if there's a what do you call it, like a oh my gosh, like a hit on your credit,
right.
like if
If
somebody
there's
has
like a
requested,
hard
yeah,
pull, right.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard other folks recommend, like, if you don't plan on making any big purchases or you don't anticipate anyone needing to go check your credit, to actually freeze
Hmm.
um, all of that stuff to basically kind of prevent fraud or anything like that. Um, I know, and the other thing is, thinking in terms of, if you are going to make, like, buy a house or other significant purchase and maybe your credit score is a little bit low, couple of suggestions would be to, definitely try to make your payments on time, no late payments, because that's going to ding you a little bit, and keep the utilization down. I don't have an exact like percentage necessarily, but I think the rule, I think it's like under 5% maybe. I could be, that's probably completely
Okay.
arbitrary, but yeah, utilization. And then the other thing I've noticed is that I feel like lenders, like, they like to, like, or something, a factor that tends to allegedly increase the score is like a diversified type of credit. So, like, for example, credit cards, other loans, things
Right.
like that, which I don't know. To me, it just seems just like, why am I required to have these things, to have this score that I don't know, that proves I
Right.
am a good, I'm good with my
A good
finances,
risk,
or I'm
right?
worthy.
Right. Yeah,
Because I
it's
think
a vicious
credit,
cycle.
yeah, because I think credit scores are relatively young, like what, maybe 40 years old. Like they didn't start until like the 70s or 80s, I thought.
Yeah, so right,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and for reasons I don't understand and will never understand, because I actually do pay for one service where I can see all three all the time,
Okay.
but one of them is always like 30 points higher than the other two. I don't
Oh,
again,
yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea why that would be the case. And then a couple of years ago, or maybe right during COVID, well, I was paying for like, I'm not sure whether I should say this by name or not. I was paying for a service, 25 bucks a month or something, and then realized that I believe as a direct result of paying for this service, I was then being carpet bombed with offers in the mail. Just there's a one-to-one correlation between signing up and paying for the service. They started selling my data, and all of a sudden my physical mail was overwhelmed with all kinds of fabulous offers that I didn't want. So I
Oh
don't
my
know.
gosh. Yeah,
So
I still
pick
get,
and choose.
yeah. Yeah. Trying to think of what else I can share. Um, yeah, because I mean, and I don't know, I haven't ever worked with anybody going through foreclosure, but I'm sure that dealing with that can probably drop your score um, significantly, unfortunately. But I think the positive thing is, I mean, it can probably, I think it probably bounces back, within maybe 12 months.
Hmm.
Um, but again, that's just from what I've read online.
Right. Yeah, I need to also I need to talk to someone in lending, but curious to get your take on this. I recall very clearly as a younger person being told by someone I was talking to, a lender perhaps, that the that your income, I'm sorry, that your housing payment, whatever it is, rent or owning, shouldn't be more than, at the time it was either one third or 40% of your gross total income. And that number has always seemed insanely high to me. I personally try to keep my housing expense to like 25% at most because I just don't want that much income. I mean, again, if you're for folks out there who are month to month, especially if if you're hourly, and then also you have so much dedicated to a rent payment or a mortgage payment, that just seems risky to me, and a risk I personally just won't take.
Yeah, I've heard the 30% rule as well, and it does seem high. Um, I mean, I would, if you can, again, depending on your situation, maybe it means, trying to have roommates. Or if you're,
Right.
of course, if you're a family, you probably don't want that. But, seeing, where, I guess, depending on where you live and where you work, you may be, unfortunately, you may be looking at living somewhere that's a little more of a commute, unfortunately.
Right.
Um, but yeah, 30% to me always, I don't know, it just seems high. Um, but yeah, I
Right.
guess I don't have a huge other than trying to get creative and find ways to reduce that if you can. But I mean, again, too, like with housing prices and like, rental prices, it can sometimes be tough. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in San Antonio right now, I mean, I do know that rental occupancies, vacancies are high, and there are deals to be had. So,
Hmm.
if you are overpaying, I think this is pretty much a trend that's nationwide. When vacancy is high, that means if you're willing to move, you can, pretty easily score a deal, getting a month free, a couple of months free, to sign a new lease somewhere else.
Yeah.
Moving is never fun, but it might be a way to save some money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Any thoughts, suggestions, input?
I would say again, if you find yourself either wanting to save for a down payment or maybe you find that you're struggling with debt, whatever that may be. I mean, just I would say take a look, take a look. I know it's not always fun, it's not easy, but really maybe sit down and go through your bank statements and really kind of see where your money is going. Because
Right,
if you're bringing in, I don't know, $5,000-6,000 a month net, I mean that's decent. Depending on where you live, of course. But like here in like Texas, in like Central Texas, I feel like that's not too bad. Again, depending on if you're single or if you have a family, but yeah, and you feel like you're just in the red every month, or you're in the red, like you see it. But take a look, take a
right,
look, and I know it's going to be hard. It might be scary, and I totally get that. That's what I help folks with all the time. It's just kind of, hey, let's take a look at this, let's figure this out, and then we can strategize ways to kind of move forward.
right,
And it may take a little bit of sacrifice. Maybe you're not getting coffee every day, or you're not eating out every day, or maybe you're meal prepping. I feel like I'm sure people hear that all the time. And I can acknowledge, like, it's not about the coffee every day. Like, that's fine. Like, figure out a balance. Like, I think I'm a big advocate for value-based spending,
mm,
like spending money on the things that you care about and bring you joy. And you can have it. I feel like you can have that balance to where you're still, knocking out your debt, meeting those financial goals while still enjoying life, basically. Like, it
right,
doesn't
right,
have to be, like, I think Dave Ramsey says, like, beans and rice. Which, if you want to go hardcore like that, great. But
right,
don't feel like you have to. Everyone's, again, like, it's not a one size all uh, type of thing, in my opinion or my
sure,
experience. And don't be, I mean, it's easier said than done, but don't be ashamed either. Like
Right.
try not to beat yourself up because we're all probably dealing with it or we've dealt with it. But you can definitely it. There's a way out. I think you just have to acknowledge what what's happening, sit down with it, and figure out ways to cut things if you have to. It may also come down to, hey, I may have to pick up a side hustle or a second job. I mean, I hate to say that, and
Sure.
that's not fun. Um, but it may come down to like, okay, there's no other way. Like I have to increase my income. So
Yeah, I mean, that's just a reality of living these days with minimum wage not being any higher than it is. If it feels like in Bear County, especially, there are lots of folks where there's a married couple with an adult child still living at home because that's their existence. That's their way to mitigate rising living expenses while income is not keeping pace. So got to do what you got to do. And there's nothing there's all kinds of shame around money and mismanaging money. So,
yeah.
to your underlying point, yeah, if you're out there and you hear this and you're thinking, you know what, I really need to, take a very clear, print out a hard copy of a bank statement and go, okay, where'd the money go? And really start to figure it out. Because if you have several $1,000s coming in every month and you don't know where it went, it's assured that you are wasting money on things that you don't need to waste money on. So,
Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention, and I guess it's fine. I also think this, there's still, I think, societal pressure around, you know, owning a house versus renting
right.
and doing all the things that, quote unquote, okay, by 30, I should have all of these things. And if we don't have them, I think sometimes we're like, well, I feel like I'm behind, but I promise you're not. Like, full disclosure, like me and my husband own our home and it's great. But at the same time, there are so many things that pop up. It's like, oh, I got to deal with this now. And don't get me wrong. I'm very fortunate with what we have, but at the same time, don't, so I guess my point is don't feel like it's like, oh, I'm 30, I have to own a house. It's like, maybe it's okay. It's okay if you rent or, live at home. Like, I don't know. I just, yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, I work in real estate in Texas, and I rent. Part of me thinks I will always rent. I mean, I'm sort of coveting having a tiny home in the mountains and buying that, and I love the fact that there is no pressure in renting. If my fridge goes out, if my AC goes out, I make a phone call and I yell at
Yeah,
somebody else, and then they pay for it. So I mean, so there's no way to reflect that on a bank statement or on a
right.
profit and loss. I can't say that I saved X thousands of dollars by virtue of not paying for those repairs. But there is a lot to be said for that peace of mind. So yeah, don't cave in to that 1950s mentality of you get out of school and you get the job and you get married and you do the kids and you buy the house. No, we're no longer in that world. So don't do that.
Yeah, no. But if you want to, great. Then
Right.
we figure
Right.
out how can we get you a good down payment saved up?
Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Great input. Thanks for your time and your willingness to come on here with me.
yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it. This is fun.
So it's Katie Totman, Clear Sense Coaching. There will be links in the show notes on this episode where you can track Katie down if you want to talk to her in greater detail or use her services. That'd be great. So thanks to Katie for being on here, and thanks to everyone also for listening. You can check us out at theforeclosurepodcast.com. And if you don't mind, please like and share and subscribe that content. We'd appreciate that as well. And we'll be back again real soon.